My name is Calin Trenkov-Wermuth, and I'm an Associated Fellow at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, and also a Research Fellow in the Livermore Global Scholars Program at Adelphi University in the United States. So my thesis is basically that the time has arrived for the United Nations to change how it thinks. And the basic argument I'm proposing is that it needs to implement and to establish what would be called red teams, or a UN red team, or an institutional devil's advocate, which will actually help to spearhead a culture of conflict prevention at the United Nations. Red teams can actually help the UN in that endeavor by helping a Secretary General make better decisions, by helping to challenge some of the core policies of the organization and some of the core strategies. In essence, they amount to an institutional devil's advocate. It offers a different approach to solving some of the blunders and fallacies of the organization. There have been many restructurings of the organization and many structural changes, but there hasn't been one yet that actually tries to change fundamentally how the UN thinks and how the UN challenges its own assumptions, how the UN challenges its own policies. And so, I'm not inventing obviously a new mechanism. Red teams exist. They're used extensively by militaries, intelligence services. But I think the reason it's interesting is because I'm proposing actually to fundamentally alter how the UN goes about its own policies and how it challenges them. The UN has been able to adapt in many occasions over many decades, and while I do think that the UN is very slow to change, I think that it always has changed. There have always been new units, new departments, new offices adapting to the needs of the time. So yes, my answer is the UN is capable of change, even if that change sometimes is a bit slow. So for example, a red team could have challenged much earlier the need to actually for troops or for UN peacekeepers in Haiti. Right now, the Security Council has made a decision to withdraw UN peacekeepers and to replace it with a smaller presence of UN police. But for me, the question is, what were these peacekeepers doing there in the last few years when there was no military problem to resolve? There was a problem of bad governance, of socioeconomic challenges, and a policing problem, but not necessarily a military problem. So a red team, I think, could have challenged at a much earlier point the need for peacekeepers in Haiti. I think that there will definitely be some resistance. I think member states have not always shown themselves to be willing to endow the United Nations with a strong analytical capacity, and they have their own interests. I think the greater resistance would actually come from within the bureaucracy, from the heads of department, from the undersecretary generals, and so on and so forth. I think that's where the greatest resistance would probably come from.